Welcome to this week's edition of the Empathic Designer Podcast. I am your host Vaidishwaran. Today's episode is going to be slightly longer as I've got a very interesting topic to talk to, taking gamification to our stakeholders. We're all familiar with gamification and have seen a ton of good and bad examples. I've spoken to a lot of stakeholders who want gamification because they have heard about it or have seen it someplace else and want to incorporate it. Discussing gamification with our stakeholders often turns up a lot of reactions that might surprise you. I once had an instructional designer in my team come up to me with a requirement from a client where they had an existing course and wanted to add game elements to it. The client had asked her not to disturb the existing course, but just make it look like a game. Interesting. So, how do we start discussing gamification with our clients? How is storyboarding for a game different from a regular e learning storyboard? How do we organize and present our ideas? Let's find out. Let us take a moment to look at this from our stakeholders' perspective. Most of them believe games add a fun element to the learning and involves points and badges. While this is true, we know that there is much more to games than that. After performing the needs analysis, if we decide upon taking the gamification route, it is important to sensitize our stakeholders on the game elements before we get into the storyboarding phase. For this, I usually create a document known as a game schema to be presented to my stakeholders ahead of the storyboard. A game schema typically consists of the following elements: the story, game elements and gameplay, the game schema, scoring criteria, and the outcomes. This game schema will act as a design document and serve as a foundation for creating my storyboard. Let's go ahead and look at how a game schema is built. Every game should have a story. This will help pique the interest of our audience and develop a sense of connection for them. From the stakeholder's perspective, a narration provides context and helps them follow our ideas much better rather than using an abstract concept with instructional design jargon. Following the story, we will establish the game elements and the gameplay. This will include the objectives of the game, the structure of the game, and its rules. We will follow this with the game schema, which will be a high level layout of the game. I would recommend making this as visual as possible. From our stakeholders' perspective, this will make it much easier for them to connect the dots and provide us with meaningful feedback on our approach. If you are presenting the game schema to your clients, I'd recommend converting this part into a brainstorming activity involving your stakeholders as equal partners in the decision making process. You can get some excellent insights through such sessions. This will be followed by the scoring criteria. We can discuss the reward system here, such as the badges and or ranks. I would suggest creating some mock-ups ahead of this session. Stakeholders tend to really like this bit, and I've seen many instances where this acts as a prompt for clients to open up more about their ideas for the game. While I have listed outcomes as a last item on my list, this is something that needs to be circled back to at every point discussed so far. While games are fun and great as part of a learning experience, we mustn't lose sight of our objectives and expected outcomes at the expense of having fun. As a bonus this week, I've hyperlinked my game schema template in the description section below. Feel free to download and customize this template for your next gamification project. Let us join hands in our efforts toward making our stakeholders' world a much better place. Let us join hands in our efforts toward making our stakeholders' world a much better place to be for them. I'll talk to you again next week with another interesting topic. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of the Empathic Designer Podcast. If you like what you heard, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. You can hit the bell icon for getting regular updates from my channel. As always, if you have any questions or feedback, please leave a message on the comment section below and I'll be glad to respond. Thank you and have a great day.